Hello everyone and welcome back to MMO class meeting number 8. And here we are in part 4, continuing our discussion that deals with how we basically measure character advancement, something like a level system or how.
Or marshmallow system.
Or marshmallow system. Every time you say that I get hungry.
I know, but that's where I feel like we are. It's like we've tried so hard, be like, oh, we can't have level system, we can't have level system. But everything we describe ends up sounding like under the surface, it's just another way to name a level system. So I don't care what we call it anymore.
All right, Nelson, so we've got you here, and you said you had some things you wanted to say.
Yeah, well, as I was coming in before we started recording, you said something like, well, if I'm doing my foraging stuff and I get to level 80, I shouldn't be as powerful as someone who, I mean, am I on the right track of what you meant? Like, I shouldn't be as powerful as a person who got to level 80 by being a warrior or by being a mage.
Well, let me throw this out there. I would really like it if you couldn't make it to level 80 or whatever your cap was just by picking bloody flowers.
Right.
But whatever.
So was that a fair summary, Jason?
What Zach said is, yeah.
I think what he was getting at.
Good enough, yeah.
But
well, I think this.
Go ahead with your point.
I think that the entire system that Gav has sort of outlined and what I've extrapolated from that makes or actually helps in that regard. Because you will have a level 80 cherry picker or whatever, because who's to say that a person who got to level 80 by bashing his sword against people's faces should be as good as picking flowers as you? They shouldn't. You should be able to get to a level 80 forager and be able to forage a bunch of awesome stuff really effectively, but that shouldn't have any bearing on how you're ranked against other players who have a lot of skills in other areas. So that's why I've been suggesting multiple numbers to kind of describe what areas that you're very proficient in, what areas you're not, and not to distill into a single number. Because once you show that number to the users, they'll say, hey, I'm a level 80 because the sum of all my skills is level 80, but all of my skill points is in foraging. That doesn't mean that they're going to be able to go in hand-to-hand combat against a martial arts specialist who's level 80 in martial arts, or even a level 40. Are we gonna
allow add-ons?
I think that's one of the major goals.
Yep. So one of the very first ones that's going to come out is going to be 50 different people coming up with an add-on that shows you your overall level. And it's no different than what has happened in other popular games, like World of Warcraft, Gavin, where...
I was just going to say, Nelson is succinctly saying exactly what I've been trying to push for the last 2 hours. So I'm just
saying, in World of Warcraft...
Cool, and by all means, sit behind Nelson and nod your head until your neck gets sore, but at the same time, at what point do you stop and go, my God, I'm overcomplicating things by saying we got to have 40 different ways to be... 40 different level 80s to be successful in this game?
But Jason, you could say the same thing about a Magic 8-Ball add-in. I mean, a person is going to create a Magic 8-Ball add-in inevitably, but it's not going to add any value. So they can add as many add-ons as they want to show them your overall level.
The add-on gear score completely changed the way people played WoW, and you were invited to groups and were able to do things with other parties that you did not know, with raids, etc.
All you had to do was watch chat.
I'm not saying add-ons are worthless at all.
If we don't give them...
If the add-on has utility, then that's great. I'm just saying that this level, I don't think, even if it's displayed, or if it's displayed by an add-on, I just don't think it should have an impact on the game. If players want to go around and compare their overall levels, then we shouldn't stop them. I mean, philosophically, we shouldn't stop them from doing anything with the add-on system within reason.
Right, but you know how much gear score affected the gameplay or the game?
You could not get into groups unless your gear score was a certain number. All you had to do was watch trade chat where people would be looking for groups. They'd say, we need DPS for this fight. Must have a gear score of 5,000 or better, or you are not getting in.
Well, isn't some of the new dungeons you really can't get in?
Even WoW has done that.
It's funny because, yeah, absolutely, Lee, because you know what? Finally, WoW said, okay, we're going to make the eye level important. So basically, you can look at that as your gear score, and we're going to make it to where you can't even get in dungeons unless you're at a certain level, which I absolutely hate that. I'm right there with Gavin saying that anybody should be able to go into a dungeon and get their ass kicked. Anybody. But, unfortunately, they took that out. But suddenly, gear score did become important because now in chat, people are saying, we're putting together this 10-man raid to go do blah, 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 and you've got to be at least with an item level of 250 whatever, and surely you've seen it, NATO.
Yeah, but surely that comes down to the fact that again, that's what WoW is, the sort of game where the gear score is a meaning.
I know, but with what you defined earlier, Gavin, unless you've changed it, all I got to do is go buy our game, get online, find a gold farmer, give them $50, turn around, jump into the game, I get my currency, and I buy all the best equipment so that I'm now Mr. Awesome, and go and do the in-game content.
Yeah. If people want to do that, let them.
You'll destroy the economy. There's been some really good studies on that done, and that's why WoW fights so hard with gold farmers.
Yeah, because Blizzard could just as easily say, yeah, so people want to go farm gold. Why don't you let them?
It comes down to what the gold is used for in game.
Well, what you just described is in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I realise that can be a problem, but equally, gold is a weird thing, and it was touched on briefly in terms of experience points when I can't remember if we were recording or a break. You said about needing about getting a ridiculous amount of experience for high-level quests in probably WoW. I'm sure it was you that said it.
Right. No, it was Zach that said it when he was talking about going those higher levels. Scream a little for us, Gav.
And you kind of get the same thing with money in that the amounts become ridiculously huge in that you get, which is why, or at least that's to my mind would exacerbate the problem of the gold farmers, because there being so much of it about. Just in terms of the sheer inflationary nature of the amount of money that you get. If you start off and you're getting like 3 copper for rescuing a cat from a tree, and by the end of the game you're getting 10,000 gold for killing something, then gold farming is the sort of thing that's going to be a problem, just because you have this huge variability of the amount of money that people can get. Whereas if you have and I hate to say this because it does make me, I sound like I'm bringing everything back to real life, but if you scale back the amount of the sort of ranges of the I don't know, does that make any? Is there a point in there anywhere that makes sense? Because the thing is, in terms of the whole gold farming thing, I can't speak to that directly because it's not something I've experienced, and I'm sure you all know more about it than I do.
Yeah, but Zach...
It really, what it boils down to is, as the person who's running the game, if you don't want your in-game economy to just crumble away to madness, where only the people who are physically rich in the real world, can ever have anything good, then you've got to have some sort of control over it. Because as soon as you allow gold farming, somebody can jump in and they can spend, say, $100 at their nearby gold farmer, and they can get all of the best of everything.
But Gavin's saying that should be allowed.
No.
And suddenly...
What I'm saying...
Because
if you have to have a certain amount of reputation with that particular seller in order to buy the uber good armor that you're going to spend all that money on, if there's a mechanism for that being... See, this is what I'm saying. Rather than having a level thing, you're having... Your progression in the world is the fact that you meet the people who sell the good stuff, or your reputation with these people changes, or some other arbitrary thing which enables you to access that. But if they, all that then means that all that you're going to have left is, if you go to a gold farmer, is a big chunk of gold that nobody will sell you anything for. I'm saying.
So we're not going to have markets.
There are other ways.
But we're not going to have markets where players can sell stuff? Players aren't going to respect what the reputation of someone else is. The players want your money.
Just put it into the real world for a minute. If there was some sort of a mechanism by which you could print your own money, and it would just work and you could take it to any store in the world, do you think that would have a negative effect on the economy?
Oh, well, yes. No,
there you go. End of story. And it will in the game, too. And I'm not saying that everything in a game has to reflect real world. Far from it. As a matter of fact, I think you guys are actually pushing that more than I am over the last little while. But in terms of the economy, I think that's a really significant problem if you allow people to have a means outside gameplay to acquire wealth. Then you are shortchanging the economy of the game itself. Basically, you've ruined the economy within the game itself.
If it's a closed economy.
What would you like it to be open to? The real world, then, I assume?
I don't know enough about economics to talk on this at any level.
It's okay. Then it's really just then it really becomes a whole lot simpler, because by allowing gold farmers, you are in effect giving people a means to print their own money.
This is though I don't understand. Why is Wolf Knightley's just posted there? You can't use money unless you have high rep with someone. Lol. Why lol? Why? That's what I want to know. Why is there this automatic assumption that just because things aren't the way they are in, for example, WoW?
What are you talking about? I don't have to do a rep. I don't have to do a rep check when I
There's already
look on Craigslist to buy something.
Yeah, well, it's still even if you don't want to go that route, that already exists. I mean, it's just like WoW already does that. There's so many things. There are so many things in WoW that I would like to buy, but I can't because I don't have the appropriate amount of rep with that faction.
Right, because there's certain things in the real world, like if I wanted some experimental ray gun that DARPA is creating, the only way I'm going to get my hands on it is if I infiltrate their social ladder.
Or unless somebody else has and sold it to you.
There's also an issue where if there is a certain item, this is a known phenomenon in MMOs. So let's say the army as a faction have the best armor and weapons. Everyone in the game wants to be armor's friend, irrespective of what they're like, what they, what their quests are like, what anything's like. They want to be friends with them. For example, sorry to keep bringing it back to WoW, but it is the most popular MMO ever. So there's a certain mount, which is the Meccano Hog, which is very popular, and you can only buy the ability to make it from a particular faction. So anyone who wants to make this item needs to have high rep with that faction. So ergo, everyone was high rep with this faction, irrespective of what they stood for or what they meant.
But that surely comes down to something that should be nerfed by conscientious designers.
Yeah, but the way you'd nerf it is you would give other factions access to a similar, subtly different item that effectively did the same thing, which essentially negates the original point.
Yeah, see, it'd be far better to give them something that is as good but different.
You're getting alarmingly quiet, Gav.
A long way away. Sorry, it's my tendency to. If I'm shouting and screaming, I don't.
Hold the mic really close to your lips.
Yeah, man.
Hey.
But then I'm just like BBC Radio 4.
But if that's what you have to do to be heard, then do that to be heard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Because you sound a lot better when you do
I'm literally holding the pop screen against my lips.
That's good because we can hear you now, and that's what everybody's saying in the IRC. And I'm with Chipsius. I like Radio Gav. He sounds cool.
I don't know. I can't agree entirely with Gavin that we shouldn't.
No, but you at least see where I'm coming from.
Gavin, let him finish.
I think that the solution to gold farmers is something that would be interesting to put into the game mechanics. But I don't think that. I don't know. I don't think that gold farming is really all that good because you could conceivably get a ton of money from gold farming and then walk over to another player who has the reputation to get certain items and give him double for the buying that item. I mean, and that is how it works in the real world. I
can't buy the liquor, but that guy can.
Let me spin it in a slightly different way too, because the idea of gold farming is that somebody is paying someone else in the real world honest to goodness cash, and in return someone else is giving them money in the game. The problem I have with that is, let's say we're the people running this game, which we will be in the grand scheme of things. Even if we go with something like a free-to-play model, where anybody can play this game, but they make microtransactions and this, that, or the other in order to give us money and thereby fund the game, by allowing gold farming, you're allowing a very significant outlet of cash that you do not control and you do not get any part of whatsoever. And from a business perspective, I have a huge problem with that. Not to mention that it completely liquidates, nullifies, and eradicates any idea of an in-game economy.
Which is a major thing we already know we'd like to include.
Yep. So yes, your economy should be closed to within the game. Period. You earn money in the game. You spend your money in the game. And though I do like the idea of microtransactions to help you get this, that, or the other item, you should never be able to buy gold, in my opinion.
But again, though, it would be interesting to put, because that's something we discussed, I mean, like almost a year ago now, Jason. We discussed how NPCs would react to you differently depending on what you've done in the past, and having that manifest itself as to what kind of discounts or what kind of items you can buy from that person.
Absolutely.
I think would be interesting.
I still believe you should have some sort of reputation
system. Which is already analogous to the reputation systems in a whole lot of different games, up to and including World of Warcraft.
Yep. I still stand by that. I think that would be very much interesting to have, and is a must.
Is there anyone else who has any more comments on this? Because I want to return to one other thing that Zach said in the IRC a while ago.
Go ahead and return to it.
Okay. Zach said that all MMORPGs ultimately boil down to combat. And I sort of took offense to that because I think that during the last few class meetings, or for the entirety of this game being discussed, we've been just describing an MMO where there's so much gameplay outside of combat, including exploration, building things, crafting things, working on the economy, running errands for people, making trade routes, stuff like that. We haven't even really touched too much on combat. We've mentioned it in length, but not proportionate to what you've said.
Combat is your meat and potatoes. Everything else is gravy.
Why?
But I don't see that. I don't like that. I think that the game should. I think a lot of aspects of this game should be able to stand on their own outside.
So, are you saying that somebody who just is a leather worker and all they do is make leather vests and things should be able to see all of the content in the game?
No. But they should be able to get just the kick-ass leather workshop with all the best tools. And if that's what somebody wants to that's what makes the game fun for somebody, they should be allowed to do it.
But that somebody is 0.5% of the player base.
That goes right back to what NATO said, that combat's your meat and potatoes and everything else is the gravy. If you love the gravy and all you want is a great big bowl of gravy and a spoon, that's fine. I'll make that the best gravy you've ever had.
Damn, you're making me hungry. Stop it.
Everybody else out there, and I'm sorry to tell you, I hate to break it to you if this is just a universal truth that somehow escaped you. When people are playing games, RPGs, MMORPGs, first-person shooters, just about any popular game out there that people want to play, they want to kill something. And you're going to have to give them something to kill.
That's what the game is about.
I had a short period of time where I played Eve for like a week, and I joined a corporation or company or whatever it was. This was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But I never really got good at combat. I specialized in mining, and something that was really fun was me getting together with all my company people, getting the best combat ships that they have, and then getting the best mining ships that they have, and then they would export us out into really dangerous mining zones. And yes, there is combat in that equation. But half of that, or actually the entire reason why we were going out there in the first place, was completely non-combat oriented.
Eve is an odd creature.
But it's an example of breaking away from the norm, which is
absolutely. Our game could definitely be about grabbing all your friends together so that you can go collect rocks. That would be awesome. You stand guard. You hold the bucket. You work the shovel.
Yes, sir.
Excellent.
You keep saying that it's about what people want from an MMO, and yet every time like Nelson made that point there, you instantly assume that it's not about that what people want is stupid. You can't have it both ways.
I'm not trying to say it both ways, but you tell me a popular game where there's no significant draw on combat, or try to show me an RPG, a role-playing game, in which combat didn't push you through the story. Other than The Sims. Portal. Please, let's not make The Sims, guys. I beg you. I'll hang my hat up right now and shrug off any involvement with this game whatsoever if we end up making The Sims.
I'm not saying that combat should not be important. I'm saying that it would be interesting if we could create stuff
a role-playing game.
Yeah, role-playing game. But if we could put enough effort into economy, into building things, into the terrain modeling, where playing as a non-combat character is completely viable. And if they want to go out and kill stuff, then they just roll another character that kills stuff.
And all I'm saying to you, Nelson, I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I'm saying that if you do a good enough job with your professions, with any crafting skills that you have, with the handling of the overall economy, that is going to come along as a matter of course. But in terms of the actual design of the game, of pushing things forward, it is, like it or not, tell me I'm wrong, it's fine, it's going to be combat driven. If you don't want to take part in that, if you're the kind of player who's like, really, all I want is to have my own little flower shop in a quiet corner of the world, and I want to sell bouquets and live happily ever after, you should be able to do that. I fully support you in that.
But
at the same time,
you should. They should then be putting up quests on notice boards for people to go and wipe out the flower shop down the road that's taking all their business, and they should be putting up quests to get new types of flowers and to find new. That's the way that those sorts that people you can actually make it possible to play the game in a way where combat isn't the main focus.
But we're not saying
but
that.
You did just promote combat through someone else. That was actually just promoting combat vicariously through other people.
See,
I just wanted to point that out.
But you know full well the point I was making.
And but you're talking like I'm disagreeing with you.
It sounds like you are.
No, absolutely
not. The way
not.
you've been arguing with me definitely sounds like a disagreement.
He's just trying to turn you on. Jeez.
All I'm saying is that if you do a good enough job with handling whatever else it is people want to do, whether it's make flowers, whether it's design gear, I don't care. If you do a good enough job at designing those systems, then the niche players out there who just want to experience that and nothing else will do it, and they'll have a great time doing it. I know people. Jason, for the longest time, actually played World of Warcraft in nothing but the auction house. Honest to God, he had this character that was covered in all this great gear. There's all of this technology and all of this artwork that went into designing all of these cities.
Yeah.
There were animations. There's all this stuff going on. And all Jason stared at was the equivalent of a frickin' spreadsheet.
Yeah, but you saw my bling.
And he had a great time doing it, and I fully support that. However, I think it's a little bit naive to make that your primary draw in terms of designing the development and forward motion, the progression of your game.
You're back.
I'm not saying it Christ. I'm not saying it should be that, yes, like you say, we're not making Farmville or The Sims, but it's the idea that, again, they become functions of how the combat-based game that is put together rubs off onto. They become ancillary to the main part of the game because the focus is always hack and slash.
If you choose for them to be.
Games. See, but this is why I'm pushing for it not to be, and I just want that because that is another thing that generally speaking is the case. These games do end up just being hack and slash, and to my mind, that's a large part of what's fundamentally dull about them in the long term.
Then I think it's possible, at least with some games. I can't speak for every game you've played, but I think in a lot of cases, that's just that you're not giving some of the other angles a chance.
Yeah,
because I can assure you, I promise you, cross my heart and hope to die, if you want to just be an artisan or a crafter or something like it in World of Warcraft, you can do it and you can have a hell of a time doing it, and you can make all kinds of money, and you can spend that money on all kinds of things, and you can actually meet people, and you can make good friends, and you can become, like a regular distributor of some particular thing, and you can get customers that you'll get to know. You'll have people. You'll actually have real people in the real world who will keep coming to you for your goods, just like if you had a real shop. And then if you take that and combine that with being able to own your own property and actually have your own shop, that's an entire sub-game that people could be playing. But all it requires is that you design the system thoughtfully enough that it takes care of itself.
Yeah. Okay, then that's good.
Well, my issue was that you said that all MMORPGs boil down to just combat. And I wanted to say that I think that we should.
It does.
Exactly what you just described.
Because the flower pickers pick flowers to make money because the people that are going out to combat need those flowers for potions, etc. The leather workers make leather because they make various leather armor things for the purpose of combat in the end, though to them for making money. Everything in the game at the end, for the most part, all comes
It's driving
back.
a war economy,
Yes.
literally.
Yes.
Can I address what Toasted just, because it's about to scroll away, they end up being hack and slash because that's what everyone wants. No, they end up being hack and slash because that's the direction that the game pushes you in to start with, so that's where the most of the attention has been spent by the game makers, which is why that's the most enjoyable part of the game to play.
I fundamentally disagree.
But if you but if you took all of your design and put it into making it really exciting to have your leatherworking shop, then you've basically made Farmville. And I think
I'm not saying you should do that, and you know
Right.
it. I'm saying you should take you should put
right, Gavin. But if you're going to identify something as a problem, then it seems logical that you'd follow that up with how it should be solved.
Yes, but it's not an all or nothing thing. It's about paying attention across the board rather than it being a combat-based game that has some ancillary merchant aspects, or vice versa, like Caesar 4 or Age of Empires, or those sorts of games which are economic games primarily, and with certain Settlers, prime example, excellent game to play, very very straightforward, admittedly, but a great fun game to play. But the combat in it is laughable. Because that's not the focus of the game. And again, it's about it's not an all or nothing thing. It needs let me extra attention over and above what's usually paid. Let me
sum this. Well, you got to be really careful there because I've seen some systems that I think you could that just become their own sub games that are so enjoyable. It's amazing. But anyway, let me kind of summarize because I know Nelson took particular offense when I said that all RPGs become combat-centric, and I really do believe that they do, but here's why. I think every single RPG out there that is successful, and I don't mean strategy like Age of Empires, I mean where you take on a character. I think 90x, the large percentage of your game players want to control the dashing adventurer who slays the dragon and rescues the princess, but you gotta remember, they had to slay a dragon. They had to pick up a sword and swing it at the throat of the dragon because that's where you get your glory. And so a lot of thought is put into how combat is going to drive forward the adventure. At the same, or murder the princess, like Toastage said. But at the same time, if you take all of the other systems that make the game interesting on the side, even if they are ancillary, as you suggest, but you make them well enough, then they can become completely viable ways to play the game. And in my opinion, for whatever it's worth to you, I think that's already been exhibited beautifully in games like WoW. And even back in the day when I played Star Wars Galaxies for like 5 minutes in its early days, you could just craft things and you could sell those to people and make money. And if you gauged how well you were playing the game, or if you gauged your character's progression by how fat your purse was, then you were happy as a clam. And if you want to play the game that way, that's fine. But here's the thing. That doesn't require a lot of thought on the designer's part. You've just got to build a really good, solid system and then let it do its thing. However, if you want to cater to the adventurers, which I will still stand by that's most of the people who play the game, the adventurers need things to conquer. They need challenges to overcome. And that is going to come in the form of things that they can engage in combat with.
Yeah, we can't change the metagame. We can only respond to it. You know, it is. I agree that it is a bit annoying that a lot of RPG MMOs, or especially on on computers are very hack and slash. That is regrettable, but it has become the paradigm, and we can't change that. So an awful lot of people will have an expected gameplay experience, and if we're not aware of that, and if we don't cater for that, it's a design fault.
You've got that argument backwards, to my mind, but frankly.
How so?
Because if you, rather than saying, well, this is what people expect to be exactly what the gaming is, so this is what we're going to give them, you say, right, this is how we're going to make our game, and we're going to express to people what the game is about, so that they buy it on its own terms, and not. This comes down to what I was trying to say before about not all MMOs are WoW.
People don't think like that, though. Well, players don't think like that.
I think it's
good for them.
People don't do this, and people want this are two phrases that I'm always suspicious of in these discussions, because it should be people seem to think they want this because that's what they've been given, and they therefore because
but they still think it.
Going, we want something else. They say, oh, we want this again because that's all that they've been presented with them, and the same thing with I don't know. It just
I don't know. To me, okay, fine. Then look, to hell with people. To hell with all of our players. To hell with all of our customers. I want there to be combat, because if there's not, we're just making Second Life. I want combat to be a draw because it keeps things interesting and drives forward the idea of adventure and conquest. These are the things that I want to see.
Cool, but I guess, again, you're not disagreeing with me, and I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you, but I do think that we should put these, I don't know what you called them, auxiliary mini games more into focus, where your level can no longer just be a number that determines if person A can kill person B, where there has to be a more granular breakdown of, okay, what makes up this level? What makes up this level because I'm a level 40 in cherry picking, and I'm a level 20 in fighting, so I'm obviously not going to beat a person who's a level 30 in fighting. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say bring the other aspects closer to the center of the game, and I think that people will notice them more. And if you develop them well enough, they will play them.
And I'm saying you're overcomplicating the matters, because who in the hell wants to be a level 80 cherry picker? And even if you did, what sort of benefit would that add to the game?
Time out. No, don't say besides me. It was just a free benefit that Blizzard gave me for picking flowers. I laughed every time I leveled up.
See, this is the thing, you keep saying who wants to do this. Well, and it comes back to what Nelson said, make it a more compelling part of the game. Spend that little bit more time in it, and people can actually connect it a bit more, rather than just making it a way to be better at fighting by going via.
Okay, then I'll just leave my opinion. I'm just about ready to throw my hands up with the argument altogether. But I'm wondering at what point you have taken so many things that you have to get good at and made the game pointlessly overcomplicated to what will, whether you like it or not, what will become a game that is inspired by combat.
War stories are always the coolest. Just to put that in there.
But that's fine. Like I said, I'm getting to the point where I'm pretty much done with the argument anyway. I don't see where you guys are really coming from, and I want to so bad. But you're saying things like, oh, well, it should be a focus that somebody should be able to have a level in leatherworking, and they should have an entire game, an entire MMO unto themselves just about being a level worker, and there should be content for the level workers, and there should be all of this focus on the leather workers. But let's also have this huge MMO for the people who pick flowers, and let's have a huge MMO for the people who make jewelry, and let's have a huge MMO for the people who make electronics. And
yes, but you're hearing that because that's what you want to hear in order to support your argument. That's not what neither I nor Nelson have said.
Right.
You're wanting all of this focus and granularity.
I'm not saying all. I'm saying more. Even if you make combat 70% of the game, I think that would still be better than a game that ignores everything but combat and makes everything else, like you said, auxiliary. I'm not saying.
But you already know that's not going to happen, Nelson, because the whole hacking thing, I'm wanting us to explore some crazy stuff.
Yeah, and the hacking thing is a good example of what I'm talking about. How that's not directly combat related,
but it will be indirectly combat related.
It could or couldn't be. You can still
just like the leather worker and the flower picker.
I think you're basically saying. Sorry, I think you're basically saying you don't want there to be a requirement for a character to have to pick up a weapon at all in the game entirely to fully experience the game. Well, not to fully experience the game, to enjoy it.
I think a lot of people.
Sorry, because the thing is,
because there is a lacking in games such as.
For instance, if you've got a character that you've played to death, that normally all that would happen to that character is that it's there on the welcome screen when you go to pick a character, and that's the only time you ever see the thing. Why not instead have that character do what they all do at the end of chapter of the book, and they go, the dwarven swords fighter goes off and settles down with his own mine that he's managed to scrimp and save to get together, and then he builds a home around it. There's more, and that's kind of what I mean by relating those aspects.
All right. I see what you're saying.
Rather than making them as purely a way to be better at doing fighting, which is what sort of leatherworking and stuff in WoW gives you. It gives you better armor because you can make. Yeah, they're things in and of themselves that could be fun. Kind of comes back to my overall point about the levels, which is that the game should be fun. That's why you would play the game.
Right, I know, and it's cool. I really am interested that we're making this really unconventional game that has neither levels nor a focus on combat.
Nor fighting.
No levels, no fighting, no gear, no graphics, no words, no players. It's a black screen with a cursor.
Anyway, I think
only gold farmers.
Just a bunch of gold farmers.
I think that a person who does want to get really good at foraging will ultimately pick up a gun. I mean, I'm saying that if, like Nato was saying, you shouldn't have to pick up a gun to get a full experience. I agree with that, but I think ultimately people will eventually mix and match.
That was me trying to comprehend what.
Perfect.
Okay, well, in Nato's comprehension.
There, which is that say if you're a leather worker, then obviously one of the things that comes into it is getting hold of leather. Now there is a crossover with the whole combat thing in that you could go out hunting like people do in real life in droves. They can go hunting and 2 game wardens, 7 hunters, and a cow. That is a way where you can be using a weapon that could help you in terms of your ability to use weapons generally, but it's not a combat. It kind of is, but it's not a combat central type.
I don't believe we're necessarily at odds with one another.
Yeah,
but it's a question. It's a question of balance. Yeah.
And well, it's one of those things. Just in my mind, in terms of professions, and how much enjoyment somebody gets out of professions, it's really on 2 very simple factors. That's if the system that supports that profession has been thoroughly thought out and designed, and then it just boils down to whether or not somebody wants to play the game that way.
Yeah.
And if those 2 factors are true, if you put enough thought into how well that profession actually plays out, you will inevitably find the odd player out there who just wants to do that and nothing else. Now, in my experience, in my very limited experience, for what it may or may not be worth, there is a reason why you see so many RPGs out there that at some point or other require you to engage in some sort of deadly combat with somebody else. I still thoroughly believe that combat's going to be a major factor in promoting the story and pushing it forward. I'm fine if there's not, but it's like, okay, we can only design and develop so much content. You can only make the game so big. I mean, we know that there is some development cap. There's like a bandwidth limit on how much you can put out there. I'm having a difficult time in my head because I like to take everything everybody says, every suggestion that you guys throw out there. I like trying to see if I can see it through to its logical conclusion, as far as I can push it in my head. And if you have a game that doesn't have its primary focus on combat, and I'm fine with saying, well, it's that way because you've said it has to be, and there's nothing that says a game has to be combat driven. It's like, that's fine. But if you take that and run with it, what are your alternatives? A game that pushes forward and it has a whole bunch of content for all of your mini games, like, you know, foraging and leatherwork and all that. And that's where I got my big, long, drawn-out argument of you basically MMO for each one of these little things. I don't think you can do that. You've got to limit it down to what's the most important. And I still, in my opinion, believe that combat, what comes out of it, the rewards for the adventure, that whole thing. I mean, every single adventure movie you've ever seen has some sort of combat that really that ends up driving the story. It's just how it goes. And I think that's a critical part. At the same time, I think all of the side systems can be designed in such a way where you will get players who want to just live in there. But the underlying what I'm getting at is that I think combat is going to be the most important forward driving mechanism, whether you want it to be or not.
Okay.
And you've got to simplify things. You can't take.
Enough.
Hang on. Just one more thing, and I promise I'll let you have the floor for as long as you need it. You can't take something as complicated as the real world and of course turn it into a game. We know that. So you got to pick on some important parts to focus on. The benefits, whether or not we go with it, but the benefits of having a combat-based game with a combat-based economy are that you do really start driving home those adventurous moments. You still open the door for people to have their niche markets. Yeah, they are pushing all of the combatants out there, but damn it, play these games. And most of the players out there are combatants in some form or another. And, we can say, well, I get suspicious anytime I hear the phrase, that's what people want. But go in there and just look around and see what people are doing. They're questing and they're killing monsters and they're doing PvP because they like fighting each other. And Wolf Knightley just said, Zach, yes, it's a big problem, is you have all these mini-game and a very short and unfulfilling main part of the game. Perhaps.
It's a question. It just comes down to that question of tying it into one coherent thing rather than having the it's like going to the trouble of putting together the level of detail in the background that you have rather than just going, okay, this is going to be okay, what do we want? We want humans on an alien planet, and there we go. There's our game, which is essentially you could have got to roughly the same point from a certain.
Go ahead. Sorry, please.
But having the detail there is what enables you to put together a coherent and a much deeper, richer world. And similarly, it feels to me that, yes, obviously combat is going to be the large part of what you do in these games. Mm-hmm. That's the be-all and end-all of it. But the point I'm trying to make is that I think, to be honest, if you can find a way to interlink the non-combat related things in a better way than just being a subsection of combat, a sort of a prep room for combat. That is where you actually stand a chance of making a game that, while still being an MMO, has its own feel to it and coming out as a different thing, and actually probably getting, I don't know.
I hear you, but maybe I'm stupid. I could be. I could be just slow. But what I need is some sort of an example. I need you to be able to say to me.
Well, I might be able to clear this up. I don't want to drag this on too much longer if we're not really getting anywhere, but I do want to kind of express what I'm about to say differently. Just, you say that people want to go out and they want to adventure and they want to conquer things and they want to progress in the story and all that stuff. And how they do that is through combat. But like Gab and I were just talking about, you could have, I want to go conquer this area and make my own city or something you can do in Star Wars Galaxies. Sure, you have to have combat to get there. In that case, the combat is the means that you get to that city where you can then build it out. Or I want to be a forager, so now I have to go into these really dangerous areas, and I either have to have enough skill myself or have an escort. And at that point, the combat is just a means to get there. It's just like quests. I have to get from this side of the world to the next side of the world, but to do so, I have to kill 5 beings in the areas.
Another concise way to put it would be something like I was saying about hunting earlier. Well, Bear Grylls, the video game, Just because it's combat, it doesn't have to be against like an army combat. Fighting with for a cause. The whole idea of going out into the wilderness and making your place in the world, building, hacking your
as
home
long as
out
there's
of the
not a
living rock
camera crew doing all of the hard work behind the scenes, I don't care.
Absolutely, but it doesn't have to be flower picking.
Yeah.
And hopping from town to town. Those are the. It doesn't need to be that way.
Well, here's what I'm. Let me try to make myself clear. I hear you, Nelson, with what you said, but yeah, if your goal is like to build a city or something,
or to explore, or to
explore, right? To me, though, those are just okay. If you're just exploring, all you are doing is moving your character around.
But no,
hang on.
This ties in with the levels.
It is grossly oversimplifying. In the process of moving your character around, you are going to have to engage in combat probably because there's going to be a bear out there that's going to try to kill you somewhere along the way. You can't get away from him, so you got to swing your sword at him. But I'm not saying that drives combat. That's not the point I'm getting at.
I'm talking more in terms of things like rather than being a level 9, your level is something like homeowner. You've built your home.
Hang on. Oh, almost. I'm almost there. But then your other thing was like if you want to build a city. Okay, fine. I think what you're saying what you're talking about there is a particular this just could easily be a well-designed subsystem where you can buy a swatch of land, you can put some buildings on it. Those buildings can become popular in the game for any number of reasons. Maybe because you have just the right shops, maybe because you have a lot of friends who come over and just hang out, and they do like just walking around your city like it is Second Life. But that still seems like what could be a very popular, if well-designed, side system where a lot of your design and content development is going to go into what are the adventurers going to experience next. After they have conquered X, you got to be ready to give them Y. And after they conquer Y, you're going to have to be ready to give them Z. I think those are going to be...
percentage of people will be happy with being a farmer.
Right.
That's why
every
you have to remember why people buy violent video games.
I think
the majority of the market because they want to.
They want to be a hero. They want to be a hero, and every heroic story you've ever heard of has a protagonist and an antagonist, and never once was that hero, unless it's a drama movie that was up for an Academy Award, never was that hero just a farmer who just married his wife and had a couple of arguments with her. I mean, if it's an engaging adventure story, then your hero is most often going to be somebody who picked up a sword, carried their shield, and faced incredible odds and somehow came out victorious.
Either that or it'll have Kevin Costner in it.
Okay, hang on 1 second. Well, Moose.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. You've been sitting here so patient, so quiet. Let me give you the floor.
Well, what I was going to say a while ago, Zach actually covered really well. But I was just thinking just now, did any of you guys ever play All Points Bulletin, APB?
No, it came and went before I had a chance.
Well, I got a chance to play it before it went. And there were some really, really good, what we would define as mini games. Your side stuff, your crafting, your systems where you could make stuff and do all sorts of things. And they were really good. One reason the game fell flat on its face so quickly is the combat system was atrocious. Mm-hmm. The guns were completely unbalanced. It was almost like the main part of the game. Even if combat wasn't intended to be a main part of the game, it was, and there was like no thought spent on it, and the game just fell. I mean, there were other factors, but that was a big one. And so, I mean, combat's going to be the truth in just about any game you make. So it's something we've got to look at.
Yeah. I think as game designers, you have a limited amount of production bandwidth, and so you have to choose what's important to you. If everything is important to you and you want to put the same amount of effort into everything, you're going to end up with a game where you do everything pretty well and nothing exceptionally. So you've got to choose what's the most important part. And to me, if you boil down the idea of an RPG, it is an adventure game. You want to be the adventurous hero. What does the adventurous hero do in and of himself? What is he unto himself? He is a combatant. He is some form of warrior, whether he uses magic, whether he uses a sword or a bow and arrow, it doesn't matter. He is somebody who conquers whatever is against him. and comes out victorious. Unless, yes, you can say, yes, well, there are the heroes out there who are just firefighters who save people from buildings. And that's true. Those are real-world heroes, and that's fantastic. But, again, I don't think you can do everything. You got to pick what's good for, you got to pick what your main target is going to be. That's my only point. And I know some people are getting frustrated with me for saying that things like building a farm or building a city or building a shop or doing your craft skills should be side games and mini games and extraneous parts. And extraneous is the wrong word, but they should be side things. I stand by that. But I think that if they're designed well enough with enough thought put into them, that they don't need to be all that huge to be very gratifying and be a whole lot of fun to do for those who want to do it.
I mean, something I was going to say earlier was, yes, okay, the main draw, in theory, would be combat, but that doesn't mean that you can't make these mini games very well designed and very good.
Oh.
And players, I mean, think of it, if you want to, Gav, as a re-education. Players who think that games are only about shooting people and punching people and, might come into this game and have a great time farming, and then realise, wait a minute, this is actually really fun, and all this economy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I've kind of got to put to the point that where I was kind of aiming to get, which is that this is the thing: if they become just side mini games, then that it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy that they will be an unliked part of the game, because people go, oh well, players aren't going to spend time playing it, so we won't put as much effort into it. So
but I think that's
and go, oh, that doesn't work very well, so I won't spend much time doing it. So the next
I think that's a really closed-minded way to look at it, Gavin. If it's designed well enough, players will do it, and I think it's important
to. Saying. I think it hasn't been designed well enough. It hasn't been considered enough in the past. That's why I was saying all this. That's why.
In what specific aspect? Do you have an example for me?
As an example, even settling down in a town and having your own somewhere to live, whatever you want to call it.
Uh-huh.
Even where that has been implemented, which is not very many places, it's been done incredibly badly, and you do get the sense that it's just been stuck on the side as a sop to either. Kind of like you were saying, it's a side thing with no real input on the rest of the game.
Right, but look at it for a minute. For just a minute, look at it from a game design perspective. Because it seems to me that the only way you could get around that problem is to go ahead and fully integrate The Sims into your MMO, so that you basically stop playing your adventure game and it turns into The Sims at that point. At what point are you demanding so much from the game that, one, you're never going to get it done, or you're going to end up in the Arma 2 situation, where I've heard Arma 2 is a really good game, but all the reviews basically agree on one thing. Because it's a game where you can run around, do a first-person shooter, or you can pilot any vehicle, and that includes helicopters, airplanes, tanks, jeeps, that it's a game where you can do so many things, and none of them particularly well.
Oh, you forgot the fact that in Arma 2 you can ride a bicycle, too.
Exactly.
I think Gavin said it best, and basically said exactly what I've been trying to say for a while. What he said, that making it appear like a side game is its own self-fulfilling prophecy. What I said with the level system is, I'll approach it at another angle. Give the people who have spent the time to build up their houses and their cities and their towns and their foraging and their armor and all that stuff, give them some sort of recognition in the same way that you give a person who's going to combat the recognition in the form of a level. So that other people start to perceive those things as being something valuable that they can do. And if you do them good enough, not perfect, not building the Sims, not anything. If you do them good enough, once people start to recognize these things as viable aspects of the game, they might be more inclined to actually get into it and find that it's more engaging.
That's cool. Get their own reward, though, if you think about it. Somebody who's spent all their time to become a master crafter has the ability to create stuff that people are willing to pay thousands of gold to get their hands on. A person who becomes a master builder will be able to build property that they can sell to other players that somebody else couldn't do. Their skill and all the time that they invest in it is their reward in of itself.
But don't they get some sort of public recognition?
They do. They get achievements. If you're level 85, you've capped out. You've done nothing but fighting. Nobody's going to give you gold because you're level 85. Go, oh my God, here's gold because you've spent all the time doing combat. Yeah, great. You did combat. You don't got any way of earning any real cash.
All with these other chumps.
This sounds dangerously like not having one overarching level number to me.
Well, I was thinking with the overarching level number, that I would think that would be something more geared towards combat and nothing else, because combat is such a broad system.
I would too, because how do you quantify what someone has achieved or not achieved in combat quickly and easily?
You really can't, because a person can be really good at rifles or really good at pistols or really good at hand-to-hand.
Yeah, and at what point are you just overcomplicating the whole thing? Well, you tell me. I'm not asking you. I'm not saying that you are. I'm just saying at what point does it matter so much?
I don't think it's overcomplicating. When breaking down between pistols, the sniper rifles, carbines, that's
You're such a
perfectly
gun
valid
whore.
separation.
But those are skill types. Those are skills. They're not necessarily levels.
Yeah.
And my whole point is that combining all those things into one little level doesn't give you enough information to determine if that person has worth in a particular situation.
Yeah,
that's all I'm saying. But
if you have a senior manager, right, that is a level. You wouldn't go up to a senior manager and say, okay, how are you with these specific things? Or actually, more accurately, if you go up to a senior programmer, that is a job title. That is a position. That is
completely disagree with that. Completely disagree with that. If I have two programs,
but you would still you would respect him based on the fact that he is a senior position in a company. The fact if he's interesting and he's important.
I'm not going to sit a manager in front of a keyboard and tell him to start programming.
Nelson, and I think he's just picked a bad example of. He's trying to make the point that you are, but he's just picked an example that involves programming that you disagree with.
Okay, yeah, that's possibly a good idea. Okay, someone who is senior to you, right? Someone who has a position higher than you because of the skills they have. The fact of their specific skills is of interest, but the primary thing that you notice before that is the fact that they are senior to you. That's all a level means. It's a ranking system. And it doesn't mean that you can't inspect a character's abilities and realise that, oh, okay, they're a melee person or they're a ranged person or whatever. But their general, it's a go-to reference number. That's all a level is.
But are you talking
it's an immediate on the spot
of combat?
Yeah, no, levels don't have reference outside of combat.
But this is the thing, though. There's sort of this is a semantic problem, because we're going back to this is a skill number, whether it's for a group of skills that are related to combat and a group of skills that are related to something else, or on a skill by skill basis. It's still not what Zach was talking about, which is an overarching level number, and I don't understand. It doesn't, or is it? Am I wrong?
No, let's go ahead and halt on level stuff. That we've got some things around here that we'll discuss and think about, and we'll see if, based off of everything that has been discussed, if we can come up with a pros and cons based off of what we've heard tonight.
Enrico, we never once thought that during this discussion we would actually summarize or conclude anything.
Oh yeah, that's a fact.
This is just an open forum where people can pose their ideas. This is going to sound worse than I mean it to, so brace yourself before I even say it. This is not a democracy where we're going to take a vote and ask you people to tell us what we should and shouldn't have. We want to hear everyone's idea. We want to hear all of these different thoughts and have people say we should or shouldn't have this, and here's why. Then we're going to collate all of that. We're going to talk about how we want to develop things, and then we're going to come back to you with our judgment on it.
And if you have an idea, and if you want, I don't think you've been heard, go onto the forums, make a post, explain what you mean, and give examples, and listen to criticism.
Because I have been reading those posts in the forums, and some of those posts in the forums get pretty
good ideas, but he just won't post them. He won't mention them. He won't bring.
Toastage does have some really good ideas. He also has an insistence sometimes that we just remake WoW. and it's just it's just a back and forth thing. But right now, I just want to hear what everybody has to say, because it's entirely possible that one of you guys is going to say that thing. You're going to have that idea to make me go, my God, you're right. I've never needed levels. To hell with levels.
Which is why we pushed Gavin so hard tonight in trying to find...
Well, that's why I pushed back so hard as well, because, like you say, if somebody's got an idea, for God's sake, get out there, get on the forums, PM it to someone, to tell someone about it, if you want to input. Because I'm arguing this point way beyond the point that I think is rational.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're probably going to end up with levels, and certainly it's going to be mostly combat-based. But trying to get past the sort of shell of what people accept as being a given has been my sort of thing.
Let me just say this, and then we're going to take a break because we're at the 1 hour mark.
Actually, we're going to wrap it for tonight.
Okay, we're going to wrap it for tonight. Just on the subject of levels, which we were trying to get away from, here's what I'm afraid of. I'm not going to try to speak for the entire gaming audience of the world. I'm just going to say my fears. I think it's entirely possible that if you take the idea of all of your skills and try to use a big, long array or matrix of numbers to define how good or bad your character is at such a high granularity, you're taking a game and making it into a simulation. You're making things a lot more complicated than they need to be in order to be fun. I want the game to be fun first. And in order to be fun, it's got to be simplified down from what you experience in the real world. Now, in the real world, if you were going to hire somebody to come join you on a gun-toting adventure, you would want to know all of everything they've achieved. You'd want to see a resume of some sort. Showing, here's all of the different security things I've been on. Here's all of the firearms I'm proficient with. You'd want to know all of that because it's the real world. In a game, I think you can get a lot more fulfillment out of it and have a lot more fun and keep things moving a little more quickly if you can find a meaningful way to simplify it down. That's my only fear, is that too much granularity will get some... Fuck people. I'm sorry. No people. I believe that it will eventually wind up overcomplicating matters to an unnecessary degree to have an enjoyable game. That's my only point. And that's why I keep bringing up things that sound like we should have an overarching level number, okay?
Yeah, that's cool. One quick thing I want to make clear is that I wasn't suggesting at any point that even the consideration of whether or not any of this should be shown to the player. I'm not suggesting the player go around armed with a list of stats. This, to my mind, none of this is what is given to the player at all. But just to clarify that.
Yeah. I mean, there are some benefits in my mind in exposing it, but I think we've circled around that plenty of times now.
But it's definitely given us some stuff to talk about over here. Not to mention, we'll see if we can. Get together what Enrico was looking for and put a pros and cons based off everything that we've heard tonight and some of our own personal thoughts as well into the mind map for having such a system, as well as put a little bit up there about some of the minigame discussion that we had tonight. I've got a few ideas of things that I'd like to have Zach put together. And then if you guys are up for it, we can have another one of these meetings very soon. It's Thursday. I mean, we might even could have one as early as maybe Monday again and jump right back on it. For those that want to continue discussing another part of this, of the whole game mechanics, we're going to have to do a bunch of these. And again, like I pointed out at the very beginning, remember, you can skip these videos. If you're just here for the tech stuff, then that's cool. We've got loads of those. But we do, as Zach said, really want to listen to what everybody who's willing to put input in has, because at any given time, somebody may say the perfect thing that we go, holy crap, I never thought of that. Yeah. So it's just going to take a lot of this. And yes, it can be painful sitting through this for hours. But it's painful for us too. I mean, but it needs to be done. So anyways, with that, I'm going to wrap up the video, and then I will be back for those of you for a few minutes of post-show. So with that, that's going to conclude meeting number 8. Goodbye, everyone.
See ya.